चलो
अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू हुजूर।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
जैसे कि हुजूर अनवर अय्यदुल्लाह ताला बिन नसरिल अजीज ने एक दफ़ा क्लास में इरशाद फरमाया था कि हमें दलाइल हस्ती बारी ताला के बारे में इल्म होना चाहिए ताकि हम एथियस्ट यानी ला मजहब और देहरिया लोगों को जवाब दे सकें। प्यारे हुजूर, हमने एक प्रेजेंटेशन तैयार की है। इस सिलसिले में पहले इंट्रोडक्शन के तौर पर एक वीडियो दिखाई जाएगी और उसके बाद आपकी इजाजत से हम उन सवालों का जवाब देने की कोशिश करेंगे जिनका हमें अक्सर सामना करना पड़ता है।
माशाल्लाह, दिखाओ वीडियो। तुम्हारे कंट्रोल में नहीं है वीडियो? अपने पास रखना था ना रिमोट।
No man or creation is really and truly worthy of praise and tribute. If man was to reflect without any ulterior motive, it would clearly manifest to him that anyone can be considered truly worthy of praise, either due to him being the creator of life from a state non-existence, when there was no trace of life or creation, or due to him providing all necessities, provisions and resources even before there was any life, and thus there was no knowledge as to what means were required for life and its survival, nor for the protection, safeguarding and sustainability of life. Thus these are exalted attributes that can make one deserving of praise and tribute. Now ponder over and realize that Allah the Exalted alone is worthy of all these qualities, who is perfectly imbued with these attributes. No other being has these attributes. The Promised Messiah alayhi salam explains that God is the light of the heavens and the earth. He is the source of all grace, the ultimate cause of all lights and the fountainhead of all mercies. His being is the support of the universe and is the refuge of all high and low. He it is who brought everything out of the darkness of nothingness and bestowed upon everything the mantle of being. Earth and heaven, man and animals, stones and trees, souls and bodies have all come into existence by His grace. History tells us that even those ancient religions that no longer exist in the world, they also held the view of God. Whether they were in ancient America, or in jungles of Africa or in England, or in Java or Sumatra, or in Japan and China, or in Siberia or in India. What is the reason for this thought-provoking unity among such varied religions? In the ancient times, people were not linked together through any means of communication or transport. Then how is it possible that people living in isolation thousands of miles away from each other held the common view about the existence of God? Take, for example, the Aboriginals of Australia. The Australian continent is not only unique in having been completely broken off from the rest of the world, it is also unique in containing within it hundreds of social islands. It is known that between 500 to 600 such tribal units had their own independent history of social and religious development throughout an age of 25 to 40,000 years, in complete isolation from each other, except for occasional marginal contacts at the boundaries of their territories. Such contacts were not only brief, but also ineffectual in transferring their ideologies and beliefs. It was not only the language barriers which stood in the way, but also their traditional aversion to socialize and communicate with outsiders. Yet they hold the belief of a supreme power who is the first of all creation. They all invariably believe in the existence of that first cause called the High Gods, another name for Allah or God. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani, may Allah be pleased with him, writes, "The world is far advanced now. We do not need to labor over the point that if the world has a maker, he is and can only be one maker. The God of Israel, the God of the Hindus, the God of China and the God of Iran are not different, nor is the God of Arabia, of Afghanistan and of Europe different, nor is the God of the Mongols and the God of the Semites different. God is one, even as the law to which the world is subject is one law, and the system which links one part of it to another is one system." though different people, on account of their short-sightedness or lack of courage, appoint various types of objectives for their lives and stop short at worldly purposes and desires, yet the purpose that God Almighty has specified in His holy word is, "I have created jinn and men so they should worship me." According to this verse, the true purpose of human life is the worship and understanding of God Almighty and devotion to Him. However, an increasing number of people are now identifying themselves as atheists. So what are some of the reasons people turn to atheism? Of course, there are those who simply do not care about religion and choose to disbelieve in order to avoid anything spiritual or avoid being held answerable to anyone. There are those who have a hard time believing in a God they cannot see, nor do they understand the value in doing so. Then there are those who stopped believing in God after experiencing a difficulty in life and not understanding how God could allow this to happen to them. There are some who cannot reconcile science with religion and end up choosing science over religion. This often happens because many religious leaders have denied science and thus force people to make a decision: choose faith in God or belief in scientific theories and evidences. There are those who simply do not want to have blind faith. They have questions and genuinely do not understand some areas of their theology. They argue that their heart cannot accept what their mind rejects. So how do we understand and address these matters that have turned people away from God?
So the first question is, if I cannot see God, then how do I know He exists?
Well, there are many things we believe in, even though we cannot see them, such as the magnetic field and even emotions like love, desire, hunger. This is because our sense of sight is only to perceive the physical, empirical world around us. Like it is impossible to see a smell or touch a taste, in the same way we also cannot insist on seeing God. He Himself says that the eyes cannot reach Him. So this is one of His attributes, of being unseen. Even if we are able to see Him, it would contradict with His other attributes, like being subtle. And then the question also arises, how do the millions of blind people see God? They cannot see anything, and even if they don't deny the existence of objects or the idea of color. Hence, ultimately, the idea of seeing God will only trivialize Him and His existence.
But where is God?
Again, it comes back to the fact that God is not some physical entity that occupies space. He has no body or form, and thus no location as such. If you fully grasp this concept, then you will not question where God is.
But there are so many concepts of God in different religions. How would I know which one is the right one?
Well, at first glance, it does seem that each religion has its own God. However, if you think about it, the concept of God is very similar in all religions, be it a Christian, a Jew, or Muslim. All would agree that the ultimate creator is omnibenevolent, so He's all-loving, omniscient, so He's all-knowing, and omnipotent, so He's all-powerful. He is the Lord, the Savior, the Master. In fact, even in religions that seem radically different, so for example in Hinduism, where there are many deities and God is male and female, however, they all come back to one ultimate unchanging supreme force, which is known as Brahman. There again, it is just one God. The fact that the differences have occurred between religions, for example Trinity in Christianity, is because over time the teachings of religions has been distorted and misinterpreted. Logically then, it makes sense to believe in the complete and perfect religion, which is Islam.
Okay, but I think I'm a good person. I do not lie or steal, so why do I still need to believe in God?
Well, how do you know you are moral? Yes, you do good things like telling the truth and avoid bad actions like stealing, but how do you really know that these are good or these are bad? There's a fine line between morality and immorality. So how do you know where you stand? This again is your basic, intrinsic morality and consciousness, which is God-given. It is Allah who decides what is right and wrong, and we are taught this through religion and society. So even when you believe you are following your own consciousness, essentially it is a product of your upbringing or by seeing the consequences of your actions. But in the end, they all trace back to God's will.
But how can God exist when the world is ruled by the harsh laws of nature, which allow suffering of innocent and pious people through natural disasters and disease?
The answer to this is very simple if one realizes that God has in fact created two laws which govern the world, the law of nature and the law of Sharia, and both have been designed to work separately. When something occurs in the law of nature, its effect can be seen straight away in this world. On the other hand, when something occurs in the law of Sharia, its effect is not immediate. Rather, it is seen in the form of reward and punishment in the hereafter, because the law of Sharia is concerned with the spiritual and moral condition of man. So, if a pious follower of the law of Sharia breaks the law of nature, he will have to bear the consequence of doing so, because the law of nature is the same for everyone, and it does not yield to the law of Sharia. Nevertheless, atheists should keep in mind that God is most merciful, and when someone prays to Him with all his heart, God does indeed perform miracles and save His pious servants from tragedies.
Could you give an example of this?
Okay, so consider for a moment when someone dies in a natural disaster of some sort, such as drowning in a flood. An atheist might claim that the person who dies did not break any law of Sharia, therefore it was unfair of them to die in such a way, thus arguing that a merciful God does not exist. However, we must understand that the law of nature and the law of Sharia operate separately, and that a pious person will get their reward for following the law of Sharia in the next life.
Okay, so if God did exist, there would be no sin or injustice in the world. Surely the presence of evil proves that God does not exist.
God the Almighty has provided humans with a code of life to aid their moral and spiritual progress. This is the law of Sharia. He has given humans a choice: follow it or leave it. Those who follow it receive the rewards of God, and those who do not are deprived of His rewards, and this is called sin. So, sin has not been created by God, rather it is born when man refuses to follow God's commands.
So we are forced to follow the law of nature, but why is it that we have a choice to follow the law of Sharia?
The answer to this is very simple. If God made it impossible to break the law of Sharia, everyone would become righteous. So the purpose of man to strive to become righteous through his own efforts would become totally useless. Even though sin would not exist, humans would become very lazy, and they would lose all motivation to achieve anything, thus closing all doors of progress for mankind. No person would be truly worthy of being called virtuous. So, free will is actually a gift from God, because without it, man would not be truly virtuous.
Okay, so we have talked about law of nature. What about the theory of evolution? It explains how complex life was created by natural selection over billions of years. But where does God come into this?
Well, natural selection relies on chance and probabilities alone. See, the age of our planet is 4.5 billion years, but that is nowhere enough to create the complex array of life forms that we see today. Take hemoglobin, which is a major component of the red blood cell, as an example. Richard Dawkins, who is a strong supporter of Darwin, calculated that if hemoglobin was left to chance alone, it would have taken 10 to the power of 190 years to create it just by chance. So just for hemoglobin to have arisen by chance alone, our Earth would have to be more than 20 times older than it is now. The Darwinian principle doesn't explain this. It's like putting a monkey in front of a computer and suddenly expecting him to reproduce a sentence of Shakespeare's work by randomly typing on the keys. You're more likely to end up with a broken computer.
Okay, assuming that it was by chance, no matter how unlikely, it doesn't explain nor convince me where God comes into creation of life.
So the theory of evolution relies on natural selection. But if we analyze natural selection, we realize that natural selection cannot create, but it only works on whatever has already been created. For example, the eye has several types of cells that work together to create a functioning eye. How did they co-evolve by natural selection? Because if even one cell type is missing, the whole eye becomes useless. So it just doesn't make sense. The matter of fact is that science struggles to explain them since they are designed. And design can only come from a creator.
So if all things have been created, what came before God?
So first of all, that statement is incorrect. All things have been created except God. God has always existed.
Okay, but for the sake of argument, what if God was also created? Then what?
Well, that's not a problem, because if God was created, then whoever created God is God, and the creation is just a chain of cause.
But this turns into a never-ending chain, and thus leads to the thinking that a prime being simply doesn't exist.
This statement is again illogical. If we cannot prove the existence of the start of the chain of cause, then everything that comes after it also becomes non-existent. But we know the world exists, and from all the other points just discussed, we know that a creator must also exist for this world. See, only a being that has not been created is worthy of being called God.
If God is the creator, why did he create things which are harmful to his creations?
Firstly, we must realize that God created everything as he deemed appropriate. Nevertheless, for the sake of argument, even if we do look at the apparently harmful things created by God, we realize that nothing in this world is fully harmful. In fact, everything has a definite positive function. We mere humans do not possess the knowledge to ascertain the reason behind each and every one of God's creations. So, it is better for us if we accept things, even if we do not know all the intricacies behind it, and leave the rest up to God. Furthermore, even things which have no apparent human benefit, such as tragedy and hardships, are useful in the sense that they help perfect a man's morals, as without facing difficulty, man cannot possess perfect morals.
So what are the benefits of believing in God?
To be honest, for a believer, the inner conviction and peace that one feels with their belief in God is the biggest and most ultimate benefit. And then this peace extends into a brotherhood, as belief in one supreme being is the ultimate source of unity. It's a completely unique feeling that ties and bonds us together. The knowledge that everything happens by the will of Allah and hence is for the best also provides security. In fact, it also makes the believer curious to understand the order behind what Allah has decided and created for us, because it must have some purpose. Say, for example, we do believe that chance is the driving force for evolution. Then it is odd that there is any order to investigate. So not only does belief in God enable us to elevate our spiritual state, but also encourages intellectual progress. So, does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does, thank you. However, we would like to open this to the class now. Do any of the girls have any questions?
तुम्हारी तसल्ली हो गई? सबसे बड़ी एथिस्ट तो तुम लग रही हो मुझे। हैं? अच्छा। हाँ बताओ।
Assalamualaikum प्यारे हुजूर। As Muslims we believe कि अल्लाह मियाँ अपने प्यारे बंदों को ही आजमाइश में डालता है। तो हम कैसे बता सकते हैं कि वो अल्लाह मियाँ की आजमाइश है या फिर हमारे लिए सजा है वो?
तुम बताओ, कहते मैं जवाब दूंगी।
हुजूर, इसका तो मेरे भी बल्कि ये ख्याल आया था कि अगर हम अल्लाह मियाँ के प्यारे हैं तो फिर हमें क्यों अल्लाह मियाँ आजमाइश में डालता है, लेकिन ये भी है कि अगर हम अल्लाह मियाँ के प्यारे